Hey Hotshot, it's Jess with Emotional Fire Academy here today to talk about do this to completely transform as a highly sensitive person. Subscribe to my channel if you are a highly sensitive person looking to up-level this year and totally rock it in 2021. I put out weekly tips, tricks, and tools to help you do just that and get to where you want to be as a sensitive person. Who am I? I'm Jess. I'm your driver operator on this journey. I am a former firefighter and a master NLP practitioner. So welcome to my channel. Welcome to Emotional Fire Academy. And today we're going to give a bigger picture view of how to really transform yourself this year and what to do to get those results. So we come back to the emotional fire triangle. If you've seen any of my videos, this will be familiar to you. I subscribe to the idea that language, conditioning, and our physiology come together to create the fire of emotion. So when we're looking at a problem, we can look at this triangle and kind of diagnose it from one of the three sides as to what's actually happening and creating an emotional reaction in a certain situation. And being a highly sensitive person to me means that you are used to a high level of input physiologically, right? My view of being a highly sensitive person comes heavily from this side of the triangle, the physiology, that you're actually receiving 2 to 3% more sensory data than most people, than the other 80% of the population. And so that sets you up as an HSP to operate on a higher level of input. So essentially your operating system is running a little bit more data than everybody else's, and that adds up over, days, weeks, months, years to a lot more stuff. And I think the early conditioning also as a highly sensitive person, we also, because of that fact, that physiological fact, we start to receive conditioning at an early age, messaging from family members, from friends, from teachers, from other students, from the world. We start to get this early messaging that there's something different about us, there's something wrong with us, we're not allowed to feel the way we feel or perceive what we perceive. And so in that comes a lot of these, unfortunately, artifactual conditioning patterns, right? As a child, as a younger person, when we're getting this messaging, then we create meaning of it, we create story behind it, and that is what forms the foundation of our conditioning, right? We create these structures and meanings that then are then filters for us for the rest of our lives if we don't actually recognize that they're there and they're operating, right? They're programs that then are running. And so these kind of constructs of meaning, they almost have like these conditioning habits take on their own meaning in themselves, right? And then start running on their own like programs. And what I see in a lot of my clients is these programs, if left running, create almost a drama addiction. And this is what I mean, is they're heavy cognitive habits that generate a physiological payoff. So when we let the program run, the drama addiction looks like this. We make meaning of something. We see something happen, we make meaning of it in our mind with our thoughts. We're like, oh, this is happening again. And then we lapse into the program. The program initially it triggers. We go into that program. And the meaning of that program, how we've interpreted it and what it means to us, then triggers a physiological reaction. Like we actually react, and then we've created this circle where the emotion then rages out of control. So we've added to all three sides of the triangle, the fire of emotion rages up, and that is what I see with a lot of HSP clients is if they're not aware that this is happening, they're feeling on fire all the time. They're feeling emotional all the time. There's this sense of stuckness. And it may look like in your own life, in my life, what I found, this drama addiction. This is what I call it. It's the general term for a drama addiction, right? You're addicted to your own cognitive habits in a way that gives you some sort of payoff, right? And it can look, and the payoff is in the emotion flares up, and then from that emotional flare up, there is a payoff. And I believe the payoff is a physiological payoff, where it's actually a neurochemical payoff of dopamine. I think it's dopamine. And the anticipation of like the story of like, oh, people think I'm fat, and then when somebody says something that I can interpret as me being fat, like, oh, I knew it, I knew that was gonna, and then we go into it, and then we get a dopaminergic payoff for that, right? Because we're like, oh, I knew it, I predicted it, I knew it, and then we wait for that moment again to have that payoff again, to interpret something in a way so we can go back into the conditioning and then get that physiological payoff again. So again, this is something we want to be aware that we're doing. And so these drama addictions, that I call them, I think can look like being stuck in a toxic relationship, either with a family member, a friend, a lover, a partner. I was trapped in one for 8 years. I was trapped in that toxic cycle of that drama addiction, where it was very tumultuous. For other people, it's actual substance abuse, right? They have a kind of a toxic relationship with a substance where they, these patterns play out over and over again. There also can be, I think on a more subtle level, an addiction to being overwhelmed as a highly sensitive person. Because of the traditional acronym, the DOES acronym, depth of processing, emotional reactivity, overstimulation, and sensitivity to subtleties. That's the acronym, what the acronym means. There's an allowance in there to be overstimulated, right? That's what you're supposed to be as a highly sensitive person. But really, you can get into this drama addiction of feeling chronically overwhelmed, and then needing to retreat, and then and what you notice with an addiction is you're gonna need more of the payoff. You're gonna find that the spiral, it feels like a spiral down, because you're gonna need more and more, whatever it is. So you're gonna need more time sitting in that dark room. You're gonna need more time alone by yourself. You're gonna need more, the drama addiction to being overstimulated and subscribing to that story is a further and further withdrawal into yourself. That self-isolation that a lot of HSPs do as a coping mechanism. On the other hand, the leaning of over attachment to somebody or something. That's the opposite end of the pendulum, right? Of the coping from a drama addiction is then leaning on someone as you're, needing some help from someone, needing a substance to help you get out of something, needing whatever it is to help you get out of that feeling, to help extricate from the emotion. So these are kind of how drama addictions manifest. And remember that addictions are just behavioral habits that have a payoff. They're behavioral habits that have a payoff. I'm not taking a traditional psychological approach on this. I'm not a psychologist. I come at this from an NLP perspective. So the addictions are they're rooted in the conditioning, the meaning that we make of something, the interpretation of an event, and then what structures we have set up, what programs we have set up to run automatically. And these can be changed. Whatever you've conditioned yourself, or unintentionally conditioned, right? If these things were established in childhood, these patterns, these habits, they can be unconditioned, because now, being older than you were at the time when they were established, you have more wisdom and knowledge to come in and undo that conditioning. So what are some of the signs that you're in? There's a very different flavor to being stuck in that versus being that highly sensitive person who then is more on a linear trajectory. So let's kind of look at and differentiate to see where you are. Have you already gone through your transformation? Is there a transformation waiting for you as a highly sensitive person? So let's kind of take a look at this real quick. So again, you're going to feel, what does this feel like to be in some sort of addiction? And I use the term loosely. Don't get hung up on the word addiction. The behavioral pattern that then produces a payoff that might help you, if you got out of it, to actually feel more empowered, to take more control, to be more intentional about your behaviors instead of letting your behaviors rule you. When you are in this state as a highly sensitive person, you're gonna feel, it's gonna feel circular. What does feeling circular mean? There's a stuckness to it, right? There's this kind of it feels like a circle, like it feels like you're just going around and around. It's very tumultuous. There's very little movement. What you find if you zoom back and, when you're in a calm state and you look at your life, you find this like, gosh, I want to be moving towards this goal, or I want to be happy, or I want to be doing something, or I want the love of my life, these things that you want that feel so out of reach because you're in this circular pattern of habits. Right? And this is where when people describe stuckness to me, this is where they are. They're in these habits. Whereas when you make the transition over, when you start interrupting this pattern, this circle, I'll just tell you what the magic skill is that you need to cultivate. So stay tuned, keep watching. We're almost there to that point. I'll tell you what you need to do to cross this gap. So when you do make the transformation, you're going to feel movement. It's going to feel a lot more linear, right? It's going to feel a lot more linear because you have extricated yourself from this circular movement. Your goals are going to start to actually, because you're having forward movement and this perception of like moving towards the things you want, your goals are going to start to fly by. Like, it's almost like you're traveling on a highway. It's like, whoa, that was a goal and I just did it. And oh my God, what's next? Like, you have this perception of like, wow, I'm unstoppable. And there's a definite sense of forward momentum in your life in terms of your goals happening, your dreams coming to fruition, the things that, there's a definite physical momentum that you feel in terms of your own timeline, in terms of your own progress or evolution, and there's a forwardness to it. Whereas opposed to the circular, like, oh, here we go again, that familiar, this is very familiar, right? To be stuck in this circle. This is very fresh. It's very like, whoa, what's this coming up? What's this at the next exit? There's this forward trajectory. There's a freshness to it. It's more linear. Your goals start to be achieved and then fly by, and before you know it, you've already accomplished them and you're on to the next thing. There's a very quick trajectory forward. And your baseline emotion is inner peace. Your actual baseline emotion has gone from inner peace, I am in charge of my own peace, of my own emotions, and I choose peacefulness, I choose joy, I choose excitement, whatever you choose as your baseline. You've made an intentional choice to practice that and make it your baseline. And so there's not a lot of waver from that. When you do have a little blip, you sense it's a little blip, and then it's a micro movement back onto this. There's no huge roller coaster going on anymore. There's not this massive, reactionary, like up and then down and then up and then down. There's more of a smoothness to the journey and a sense of empowerment of like, yeah, it's not going to take me that much to autocorrect and get back onto that linear path. So that's kind of the difference between being in these two states. And you can get there. If you're here and you want to get here, you can get there. And what is the magical skill that we want to work on as highly sensitive people? Learning how to drop stuff. Just like you would teach a dog, like drop. If a dog runs over and grabs something that it shouldn't have in its mouth, you drop it. So or in the fire surface, if it's hot, drop it. If it's like a hot pan or it's on fire, drop it. And when I'm saying drop it, I'm telling you to drop you're doing it at the language level. Like, drop it. Just drop the subject, drop the story, drop it for a little while. It's still going to be there on the ground. It's not going to crawl away. Just drop it. If it's hot, if it's a hot topic, if it's a hot subject, drop it. Because when you drop it, when you drop the language, you're not giving it meaning in that moment. And then you start to interrupt the circle. If you're like, okay, I'm just dropping it, you don't go automatically into the conditioning, into the habit, into the program doesn't start to run. Then you don't have the physiological, and you may have already, if it's a really well ingrained habit, you may have already gone into the circle. But if you drop it, if you really drop it completely, go work on something else. Just drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. It's that simple. And I do this too. This is actually what I do to stay on the linear path. You just drop it. It's still going to be there. Come back to it when it's cool. Come back to the subject, topic, story, problem when it's cool. Come back to it when it's cool, because then, you're not going into this. You're staying on this. And then in learning how to drop it, and I really believe this is one of the most important skills HSP can learn, because what have we practiced? What have we practiced over many years is hypervigilance, of not dropping it, of looking for micro meaning, of searching, of trying to make meaning out of the littlest things and then blowing it up into this big thing. When we learn how to drop it and redirect our attention momentarily or permanently, you can just drop it and be like, I'm not engaging in this at all. And somehow it will work itself out, whatever it is. Or just coming back to it when it's cool. Dropping it when it's hot. Dropping it when it's hot. Or just learning how to drop it. That simple act of redirect your attention. Redirect your attention. Drop it. Just drop it for now. It'll still be on the ground. Come back and pick it up and deal with it when you have more control. Because otherwise we're going into the circle, and we're wrestling with it, and we're trying to figure it out, and then there's this unconsciousness where you fall asleep while you're wrestling with it, and then days, years, months go by where you've wasted time and energy in this circle, right? It's kind of there's this sense of like unconsciousness that happens when you fall into that, because it's a program. You've literally become the program instead of staying empowered as a highly sensitive person and discerning and making intentional choices. You've just let the program run. You become the program. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment below if you enjoyed this video. And yeah, practice dropping it. Drop it when it's hot. Drop it when it's hot. If it's hot, drop it. Just like a hot pan. Just like something on fire. Drop it. Drop it. You can do it. I know you can do it. Practice. Let me know what you find. Leave a comment on this video. And if you are a highly sensitive person who wants more practical tips and tools and one-on-one support in order to make this transformation, please connect with me. It is the new year. It should be a new you. Let's help you get to where you want to be as a highly sensitive person. I have a 3-month one-on-one coaching program that does exactly that, flammable to fireproof. So check that out on my website, emotionalfireacademy.com. And thanks for watching. Have a great day.